Welcome everyone. The topic for the discussion that today we'll be having in this presentation is the role of negotiation and change. We'll talk exactly what needs to be said, done during the organizational change process. So the agenda is to understand what is negotiation and apply it to a different contextual process altogether. Mostly, why do we change? Why do we require for negotiation at the times of there is any kind of distortion or transformation in an organization? So identify those factors that can create to determine the outcome of negotiation. Plan a strategy for successful negotiation. Understand the principles of win-win negotiation. Thereby, this is what we are able to do so and are looking forward to do here in this presentation. So, understand negotiation. Remember, negotiation often takes place between two or more people or parties. Now, why do this happens? Because they are of divergent viewpoints. They do not come an eye to a particular problem or to a particular situation. So, this is the point where we need to sit down and negotiate to make them a certain come to a certain sense of an argument and resemblance. It is a persuasive communication, or should I say, in literal word, bargaining. So negotiation take place when two or more people with differing viewpoints come together to attempt to reach an agreement on an issue. Remember, negotiation is about the best possible deal in the best possible way that we are looking forward to it. That is what negotiation. Then essentially four types of negotiation, but what I have listed is only three types. Why? Because the last negotiation is not a negotiation at all, which has been not listed. It's a lose-lose thing. You do not come to a conclusion in any fashion in which both the parties or all the parties involved in negotiation actually is a loser. There is a stalemate. There is absolutely stalemate to the problem, to the disagreement that they were facing around it. So it is not a type of a negotiation. Negotiation is wherein we come to a certain sense of agreement in a lose-lose situation. There are no sense of argument. In fact, the status quo remains the same thing. So distributive is win and lose, integrative is win and win, and benefit is again win and win. So that is what we are talking around it every now and then. So types of negotiation essentially are of three types, wherein there's a distributive where there is a party winning and a party losing. It can be any of the parties. And then there's an integrative where everybody parties benefits. Absolutely every party benefits the win-win solution. So that is what we should be looking into it, the benefits of win-win. The two types that comes around here. We have to understand what have you negotiated, what was fully negotiated, and what factors enabled your success. This is what we are looking as in the roles of a managers, the roles of a negotiation in the change that comes around it. What did you do, and what were the things that you have done it right? Planning to negotiation is to establish our objective, establish other parties' objective, frame negotiation as a joint statement for solution, identify the areas of agreement. Remember to troubleshoot your disagreement, bargaining, and seek alternative solutions now and then. Introduce trade-off agreements and close, summarize and ensure acceptance thereby. You need to plan, you need to be clear about your objective. You need to establish not only your objectives but also the objective of the negotiating or conflicting party. Frame the negotiation as a joint search for solution in which either, and in fact should I say, both of the parties win. So identify the first their strength, the areas of agreement, and then the areas of disagreement or discord that has been there. Can you troubleshoot them? Can you bargain them? Can you seek for an alternative solution? Can you come up with a trade-off and probably come to an agreement and close the deal thereby? And this is what we are looking for planning to negotiation. So determine your space, determine your including space. What are you willing to give up? What are you willing to own up? And so on and so forth. So how to influence others? There are three P's that needs to go around it. One is simply the power. If you have the power, if you have the position, can you utilize it to your benefit? Then comes the perspective. In case you don't have the power, can you look at the perspective, be rational about it, be solicited for the public opinion in your favor, and that is what perspective counts. The empathy factor matters a lot. And the third would be problems. The problems will come with their unique solutions, and this is what we come around here. The three P's that influences others, that is the position, the power, the perspective, and the problems thereby. So let us understand what we are looking forward to, what makes that negotiation different. What is it that actually challenge the assumptions altogether? First and foremost is the environmental context, the force in the environment that are beyond the control of either of the parties that we are looking out here. The environmental context that is just cannot be manipulated in your favor. It is an external things and almost non-negotiable. Then there is something called immediate context, which probably is within your influences, in which the resources, the abilities, the discords can be manipulated to a certain extent. This is what we are looking forward to as some sense of measure of control that brings in. We need to speak about the fact every now and then. So we have an external factors and we have the immediate factors. The external factors are the environmental cause beyond which you don't have a control, but the immediate factors is where you can play some sort of controlling, some sort of give and take policy that happens it. So let us understand those factors that influences negotiation thereby. There are three things that comes around it. First, it's your relationship with the negotiator. This relationship that has been developed as a principal parties before actual negotiation happens. Now, what am I trying to tell it to you is your relationship. Now, you might be negotiating for the first time with the party, but your party and the other opponent party might have a history altogether. Can you reflect on the histories altogether from the background that you belong to, the perspective that you belong to, what kind of histories have been there, and how can you play to your benefit? So remember, this is where you need to frame the sets of questions, frame the solutions for negotiation. Let us understand the immediate stakeholders, the negotiator themselves, who represent managers, who represent employers, or the board of directors. Negotiators themselves as to what kind of person he or she is all about it, what kind of personality that he or she depicts, what kind of principle that he or she espoused upon it, influence with their skills, with their abilities and international experiences. Remember of the negotiator themselves can clearly have a large impact on the process and outcome of the negotiation. The person in context who is leading the charge of negotiation can play a decent amount of role altogether. So let us understand the relationship between negotiators and immediate stakeholders. The third and the last aspect is all about the desired outcomes. We are all hell bent on coming with a desired outcome. Tangible and intangible factors will play a pivotal role as the case might be. Yes, we are talking what can we give, what can we take, what is negotiable, what can be bargained for. So ethnic conflict can cause disruption to a successful resolution. Remember, that is what we go take. If we have a baggage from our history, that will play immense role, even though we might be able to ready or we might be becoming liberal in our mindset, but that ethnic conflict can be a disruption to a successful resolutions, and the parties need to recognize these facts eventually. Please understand the fact that the cultural responsive negotiation strategies plays the best role. It may be difficult to modify your negotiation strategy, but if you can appreciate it and appreciate others background, other countries culture, does mean that negotiation has an experience and skill to adapt to the negotiation strategies altogether. You will have to speak everything every now and then as on when on basis as far as the culturally concept. Remember, changing your negotiation strategies to effectively communicate with another country's culture may not bring the desired outcome, as each parties will change their strategies based on their understanding of the other country's interest, wants, and position. This is what we are talking about when we are coming from an ethnic background, from a cultural background, from a background which has a rich tradition that has been followed around it. Despite what may come forward, there are certain invisible barriers that people strive not to cross. This is what need to be understood. This is what need to be deciphered, and in all reality should be addressed appropriately. It may be difficult to modify your negotiation strategy. It may be difficult to understand a cultural background, but can you change your negotiation strategy to mitigate such kind of changes altogether? Let us understand the responsive strategies thereby. First and foremost thing is the low familiarity responses. Employees or employee agents or advisors which are of unilateral strategies, particularly people who are familiar with the cultures of both the parties, both the organization, try to bring a mediator joint strategy. Mediators will encourage one side to adapt to one culture, and that is what we are looking forward to. Yes, that is what we are doing for. Look for people who are in the know of the things, people who can bring in a joint strategy altogether, induce the other parties to use this approach also. Remember, a moderate familiarity is the first step to a negotiation. Adapt, adapt, and adapt. This is what we should be keep the mindset all about it. Keeping our own approach and keeping making modification as on when on basis. Coordinate with the adjustment and make those parties mutually beneficial. That is what we are looking into it as a responsive strategy. First, being low familiarity, bring in a mediator, and be a bit liberal. Moderate your familiarities altogether. If you are having a low familiarity, employ people who can understand the perspective of both the sides, point of views of both the conflicting parties. Bring that mediator in between and moderate your expectations at the same time. What happens when there's a high familiarity, when you are from a similar background, similar understanding? So now therein, this is the case where you have to embrace the other party's approach, understand what they are going through, why are their demands being met in the first place, being placed out there. So improvise the approach, tailor to the negotiation situation, effect symphony. Exclusive use of their home culture is what we should be aspiring for. This is what we are looking for altogether. A high familiarity is all about embracing the other party's approach, improvising an approach, and effect symphony thereby. Let us understand the factors for success, success for the negotiation and change. Remember, it is legitimacy of your case, the public role, the public sympathy that you can garner, the confidence in presenting in as the belief, as the trust that you have in the confidence that you are believing in your system, in your propositions altogether. Courtesy to the other party is giving the due respect, obviously not demeaning the other party in any particular fashion. Adaptations to the other party's style is what is the fundamental requirement. If you can infuse enough confidence in the other party and adapt to their requirements, their style, build rapport thereby. Definitely, yes, incentives and trade-offs. Research the bigger picture as the case might be. Be a little bit more liberal. Try to relate to what exactly is happening around it. Tips. I am just winding it up this particular presentation on the role of negotiation and change with giving you this viable tips from my end. First, to begin with, is to aim high. Remember, that is what we look into it. Absolutely, the aim, the pinnacle, and it is easier to lose ground than gain. It is something which I won't got to go around it. Do not be on a defensive. Be absolutely on the offensive. First, be at the pinnacle, and then slowly and steadily give your lose your ground. Give concession reluctantly, as on when on basis, definitely be open to it, give concession also, but with stringent conditions, break down the complex deals into absolutely lucid languages that makes with an opposite open question, what would happen if we would have done this thing? Suppose we were in this particular situation, how will you help us? What is the result of this wonderful presentation or wonderful agreement? For how long will it be impactful? So dealing with the stone walls, that is what we are looking into it. Always get agreement in written, never go for a verbal confirmation. Get it imprinted, get it into black and white, and I'm sure the role of negotiations and change would see a positive side of the day. It will see the bright light of the day at the end of the tunnel. With this, I come to an end of this presentation. Thank you for watching this video.